Have you ever wondered what would happen if doing the right thing led to unexpected consequences? We often hear about honesty, kindness, and integrity as virtues that guide us through life. But what happens when standing by these values comes at a cost? Megan never thought she would face such a situation. She was a hard-working waitress at a small, no-frills diner in Columbus, Ohio. For nearly 3 years, she had taken pride in her job, greeting customers with a warm smile and ensuring that every meal was served with care. She wasn't just punching the clock. She genuinely cared about the people who walked through those doors. Her upbringing had instilled in her simple but firm principles: work hard, respect others, and always do the right thing. It wasn't always easy. The long hours left her exhausted, the pay barely covered her bills, and the management hardly acknowledged her efforts. But she never complained. Megan had responsibilities beyond herself. Unbeknownst to her younger brother, she quietly helped cover his college expenses, making sure he had enough for textbooks and food. She sacrificed her own comforts to make his life a little easier. Then, one quiet evening, something happened that set off a chain of events she never saw coming. An elderly man walked into the diner. His clothes were neat but worn, his posture straight but hesitant. Megan noticed right away how the other employees ignored him. She could sense the unspoken judgment, the silent decision that he wasn't worth their time. But Megan didn't hesitate. She walked right up to him, greeted him with the same warmth she gave every customer, and led him to a comfortable booth. She poured him a fresh cup of coffee, engaged him in small talk, and treated him with the kindness she believed everyone deserved. That small act, one that should have been nothing out of the ordinary, set everything in motion. The next day, she would walk into the diner expecting another shift, but instead, she would leave with her entire life turned upside down. As we delve into Megan's inspiring journey, we invite you to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever faced challenges when standing up for what's right? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to inspire others. The evening at Lancaster Grill was like any other. The dinner rush had come and gone, leaving the restaurant in a familiar lull. Megan moved through her routine with the quiet efficiency she had developed over nearly 3 years on the job. She refilled sugar dispensers, wiped down counters, and checked the clock, counting the hours until closing time. The rhythm of the restaurant was predictable, almost comforting in its monotony. Then, the bell over the door chimed. Megan looked up to see an older African-American gentleman step inside. He wasn't flashy, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. His button-up shirt was neatly pressed, his slacks well kept, but there was something in the way he hesitated just inside the doorway. A quick glance around the room told her that he had already sensed the unspoken judgment. It was subtle but unmistakable. Beth, a senior waitress, didn't look up from her phone. Jason, another server, gave the man a brief glance before returning to his conversation. No one greeted him. No one offered him a menu or acknowledged his presence. Megan had seen it before. The way certain customers were treated differently. The way silent choices were made about who was worth engaging with and who wasn't. She could have looked away, pretended not to notice. It would have been easier to blend into the quiet indifference of her coworkers. But that wasn't who she was. So instead, she set down the sugar dispenser, grabbed a menu, and walked over. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Just you tonight?" The man met her eyes, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he gave a small nod. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice steady. Megan smiled, gesturing toward a booth by the window. "Right this way. Hope you don't mind the view. It's the best seat in the house." He chuckled, following her to the booth. "Sounds perfect." She set the menu down in front of him, pulling a pen from behind her ear. "Can I start you off with something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee, please. Black." Coming right up. As she walked to the coffee station, she could feel the eyes of her coworkers on her. Beth and Jason exchanged a glance, their expressions laced with silent judgment. Megan ignored them. She had made her choice, and she wasn't going to second-guess it now. She poured the coffee and returned to the booth, setting the steaming cup in front of the man. "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else." He glanced around the restaurant before looking back at her. "You the only one working tonight?" he asked, his voice low. Megan knew what he meant. She glanced toward the counter, where Beth was still scrolling through her phone. Jason still chatting idly near the drink station. She sighed. "Feels like it sometimes," she said lightly. The man chuckled, shaking his head as he flipped open the menu. "What's good here?" Megan tilted her head, considering. "Depends on what you're in the mood for. If you want something solid, the pot roast is made fresh. But if you want my personal favorite, the grilled salmon is the way to go." He raised an eyebrow. "That's so." She nodded confidently. "Promise you won't regret it." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Salmon it is then." Megan jotted down the order. "Great choice. I'll get that started for you." As she turned to walk toward the kitchen, she heard Beth mutter, just loud enough to be heard, "She's wasting her time." Megan clenched her jaw, but didn't respond. Instead, she kept walking, placing the order and refilling a fresh cup of coffee for another table. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, but that didn't mean she wouldn't stand her ground when it mattered. By the time she returned with the man's meal, the restaurant's atmosphere had shifted. Beth and Jason's whispers had grown quieter, their glances more frequent. Even Tom, the manager, had poked his head out of his office, scanning the room before disappearing again. Megan felt a strange sense of unease settle in her stomach, though she pushed it aside. She had done her job, the same as always. Setting the plate down in front of the man, she offered him another smile. "Enjoy your meal." "Thank you, Megan." She froze for a second. She hadn't introduced herself. He noticed her hesitation and chuckled softly. "It's on your name tag." She laughed, shaking her head at her own momentary lapse. "Well, in that case, you're welcome." As she walked back to the counter, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this night. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Megan moved with ease, ensuring the gentleman had everything he needed. She checked in on him periodically, refilling his coffee before he had to ask, offering a warm smile each time she passed his table. It was second nature to her, treating customers with kindness, making sure they felt welcome. She didn't think much of it. To her, this was simply how she did her job. But around her, the restaurant's usual rhythm was shifting in subtle, uncomfortable ways. Beth was watching her, her lips pursed in irritation. Jason cast sideways glances while pretending to wipe down a nearby table, his motions slow and deliberate. Their whispers were low but persistent. Megan could feel the tension creeping in, the weight of unspoken judgments pressing against her shoulders. She kept her focus on her work, refusing to acknowledge the growing discomfort. If this was going to be a problem, then so be it. She had done nothing wrong. The gentleman, seemingly unaware of the scrutiny surrounding him, ate his meal with quiet satisfaction. When Megan returned to check on him, he looked up with a grateful expression. "Food's excellent," he said. "That salmon was just as good as you promised." Megan smiled. "Glad to hear it. Can I get you anything else? Maybe a slice of pie." He chuckled. "You drive a hard bargain. But you know what? Sure. Let's go with the apple pie." She nodded and turned toward the kitchen, ignoring the pointed looks from her coworkers. She wasn't about to let their pettiness ruin her night or change the way she treated people. That wasn't who she was. By the time she returned with the pie, the tension in the air had thickened. She could hear Beth whispering to Jason, their hushed voices laced with irritation. Even Tom, the manager, had stepped out of his office to cast a quick glance toward the dining area. Megan felt a flicker of unease, but quickly pushed it aside. "Here you go," she said, setting the plate down in front of the gentleman. "Hope you like it." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Megan, right?" She hesitated for half a second before nodding. "That's me." He gave her a small smile. "You've got a good way about you. Not everybody would have taken the time." Megan felt a strange warmth at his words. "It's just the right thing to do," she said simply. He held her gaze for a moment before nodding. "More people should think that way." She left him to his dessert, but the unease in her stomach lingered. The hushed conversations, the looks, the fact that Tom was paying attention now, it all felt like a storm brewing just over the horizon. Still, She told herself it was nothing. People whispered all the time. It wasn't her problem. The next morning, she realized just how wrong she was. Megan arrived at Lancaster Grill like she always did, pulling into the parking lot a few minutes before her shift started. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a pale glow over the asphalt. She grabbed her apron from the passenger seat and took a deep breath before heading inside. She expected the usual, Beth chatting at the counter, Jason pretending to be busy. What she didn't expect was the way they all stopped talking the moment she stepped inside. Beth's smirk was unmistakable. Jason avoided her gaze. Even the kitchen crew had gone unusually quiet. Megan's heart gave a small, uneasy lurch. Then, Tom stepped out of his office. "Megan," he called, his voice flat. "Come with me." She swallowed hard, her stomach twisting. Sure." She followed him into his office, the door closing behind her with a quiet click. Tom leaned against his desk, arms crossed. He exhaled heavily before speaking. "We're letting you go." The words hit like a slap. Megan blinked, not quite registering what she had just heard. "Wait, what?" Tom's expression remained impassive. "It's just not working out." She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "I've been here for 3 years. I've never been late, never missed a shift. How is it not working out?" He didn't meet her eyes. "It's a decision that's been made. You can pick up your last paycheck next week." Megan stared at him, her pulse pounding. This was about last night, about the way she had treated that man, about how she had refused to go along with the silent, unspoken rules of the place. She clenched her fists. "This isn't right. You know that." Tom's fingers tapped against the desk. "Nothing I can do. It's done." Megan swallowed against the lump forming in her throat. There was no point in arguing. The decision had been made long before she walked into that office. She reached behind her, untied her apron, and set it on the chair. When she looked back at Tom, her voice was steady. "I hope you realize what kind of place you're running." Tom didn't respond. She turned and walked out, her legs feeling heavy beneath her. As she stepped back into the dining area, she caught Beth's satisfied smirk and Jason's barely concealed grin. They had been waiting for this. Megan refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She lifted her chin, walked past them without a word, and stepped into the cool morning air. She had no job, no paycheck, no backup plan. Her hands tightened into fists at her sides. Then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated before pulling it out. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut told her to answer. "Hello." A deep voice came through the line, steady and familiar. "Megan, this is Richard Lawson." Her breath caught. "I'm sorry, who?" "The man you served last night at Lancaster Grill." Megan sat up a little straighter. "Oh, yes, sir. How can I help you?" There was a pause. Then, Richard said something that made her grip the phone a little tighter. "I heard what happened." Megan sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel as she tried to process what had just happened. The morning sun had barely risen, yet she felt like an entire day had already passed. The weight of losing her job so abruptly settled in her chest, tightening her throat. She had done nothing wrong, at least nothing that warranted this. She had simply treated someone with respect, and for that, she had been cast aside. Her phone buzzed in her lap, startling her. She glanced at the screen, an unknown number. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, assuming it was another spam call. But something in her gut told her to answer. "Hello," she said hesitantly. A deep, steady voice came through the line. "Megan, this is Richard Lawson." She frowned, the name unfamiliar. "I'm sorry, who?" "The man you served last night at Lancaster Grill," he clarified. Her breath caught. "Oh, yes, sir. How can I help you?" There was a pause on the other end. "I heard what happened." Megan let out a dry, humorless laugh. "News travels fast, I guess." "It does," Richard admitted, "especially when it concerns my restaurant." Megan sat up straighter. "Your restaurant?" "Yes," Richard said simply. "I own Lancaster Grill." For a moment, Megan couldn't speak. The words didn't make sense. The quiet, unassuming man she had served last night, the man her coworkers had ignored, wasn't just a customer. He was the owner. I didn't know, she finally managed. I didn't want you to, he said. I visit my businesses unannounced. I like to see how they're really run when no one thinks they're being watched. Megan felt her stomach drop. And what did you see? Richard sighed. I saw my staff ignore me. I saw a culture of favoritism and exclusion. And then I saw one person, only one, treat me with dignity. That was you, Megan. She exhaled slowly, her mind reeling. I was just doing my job. No, Richard said firmly. You were doing more than that. You were doing what was right. And because of that, I now know exactly what's wrong with my business. Megan wasn't sure what to say. Part of her felt validated, but another part still ached from the injustice of it all. So what now? She asked quietly. Now, Richard said, I need to fix this. And I want you to help me do it. Megan blinked. What? I need a new manager, Richard continued. Someone I can trust. Someone who understands what it means to treat people with respect, both customers and employees. And from what I saw last night, that person is you. Megan's heart pounded in her chest. You want me to manage Lancaster Grill? Yes. Effective immediately, if you're willing. She shook her head, trying to wrap her mind around what was happening. Just an hour ago, she had been fired. Now, she was being offered a promotion. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. You can, Richard assured her. And you should. You already have the respect of the people who actually matter, the customers. The rest will come with time. Megan hesitated. What about Tom? Beth? Jason? The rest of them? Tom is already gone, Richard said. I called him first thing this morning. I don't tolerate managers who let discrimination thrive under their watch. As for Beth and Jason, he sighed. That will be up to you. If you think they can change, you can give them that chance. If not, you don't owe them anything. Megan stared out the windshield, her thoughts a whirlwind. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an opportunity to create the kind of workplace she had always wished for. A place where people were treated fairly, where kindness wasn't seen as a weakness. She took a deep breath. All right, she said finally. I'll do it. Richard's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Good. Be there by noon. We've got work to do. As the call ended, Megan set her phone down and exhaled. Less than 24 hours ago, she had walked out of Lancaster Grill feeling worthless. Now, she was about to walk back in as its new leader, and she wasn't coming to play nice. Megan took a deep breath as she stepped through the familiar doors of Lancaster Grill. Just yesterday, she had walked out, believing she had lost everything. Now she was walking back in, not as a waitress, but as the new manager. The weight of that reality settled on her shoulders, but she refused to let doubt creep in. This was her chance to set things right. She could feel the eyes on her as she made her way to the manager's office. Beth stood behind the counter, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Jason leaned against a booth, his usual smirk absent. The tension was thick, but Megan had expected it. Change was never easy, especially for those who benefited from the old way of doing things. She wasted no time. That afternoon, she gathered the staff for a meeting. I know this is unexpected, she began, keeping her tone calm but firm. Things are going to be different around here. Lancaster Grill should be a place where everyone, staff and customers alike, is treated with respect. That means fair treatment, no favoritism, and no more ignoring people just because of how they look. If that's a problem for anyone, now is the time to speak up. Silence. A few employees exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Beth, however, scoffed. And what, you're just gonna fix everything overnight? Megan met her gaze steadily. No, but we're going to start today. Beth rolled her eyes and looked away. But Jason muttered under his breath, we'll see how long this lasts. Megan ignored him. Actions would prove more than words ever could. Over the next few days, she made it a point to lead by example. She arrived early, stayed late, and pitched in wherever she was needed. She greeted customers warmly, checked in on tables, and made sure every order was handled with care. It didn't take long for the employees who genuinely cared about their work to take notice. Slowly, they started following her lead. She also made changes to the workflow. She implemented fair shift rotations, ensuring that no one was stuck with the worst hours every week. She introduced a tip-sharing system so that everyone, from the waitstaff to the kitchen crew, got a fair share of the restaurant's success. And most importantly, she kept an open-door policy. Anyone could come to her with concerns, and she would listen. Some employees resisted at first. Beth continued to be standoffish, and Jason made his discontent known through passive-aggressive remarks. But Megan remained unwavering. She called out discriminatory behavior when she saw it. If a customer was ignored or mistreated, she addressed it immediately. There were no more unspoken rules about who deserved good service. One evening, an elderly woman entered the restaurant and was seated by the window. Megan noticed Beth hesitate before approaching her table, an old habit resurfacing. But something had changed. With a quick glance toward Megan, Beth straightened her shoulders and approached with a polite smile. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As the weeks went on, the energy in the restaurant shifted. Customers began to notice the change. Regulars who had once been overlooked started returning, and new customers lingered longer, commenting on how much friendlier the place felt. Even the staff seemed lighter, more engaged. Those who had once been indifferent to their work now took pride in it. Then, one afternoon, Richard Lawson walked in. Megan was reviewing schedules in the back when she heard his voice. "How's my investment doing?" She turned to see him standing at the counter, surveying the restaurant with a knowing smile. Megan set down the papers and walked over. "Better than ever." Richard nodded. "I can see that." He glanced around, watching as staff moved with purpose. Customers chatted over their meals, and the kitchen hummed with efficiency. "You've done good work here. I knew you would." Megan exhaled, finally allowing herself a small smile. "It wasn't easy, but it's been worth it." Richard studied her for a moment. "And do you think they've learned?" "Those who resisted the change." She thought about Beth, who no longer scoffed openly at her, but still kept her distance. Jason, who had quieted his complaints but remained wary. "Some have," she admitted. "Others are still adjusting. But they know the old way isn't coming back." Richard nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. Keep going. You're just getting started." As he left, Megan looked around the restaurant, taking in the small but significant changes that had taken root. The job wasn't done. There was still resistance, still work to do. But for the first time, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Megan knew stepping into her new role wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't anticipated just how much resistance she would face. Beth and Jason, who had been at Lancaster Grill for years, resented her promotion. They made no secret of their disdain, exchanging whispers when she walked by, questioning her decisions under their breath, and dragging their feet whenever she gave them instructions. It was a quiet rebellion, but it was constant. Despite their hostility, Megan remained focused. She refused to be drawn into their negativity. Instead, she made a point to lead by example. She arrived early and stayed late. She worked side by side with the staff, rolling up her sleeves during busy hours, taking orders, running food, and bussing tables when needed. She wanted them to see that she wasn't just here to give orders. She was here to work alongside them. Some of them noticed. Some of them even started to respect her for it. One afternoon, while she was wiping down a table, an elderly woman called her over. Mrs. Jenkins had been coming to Lancaster Grill for years, always ordering the same meal and sitting in the same booth by the window. Megan approached her table with a smile. "I don't know what you're doing differently, dear, but the service here has never been better," Mrs. Jenkins said, patting Megan's hand. Megan felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. That means a lot." "Keep it up," the woman said with a wink. "You're doing something right." It was a small moment, but it reassured Megan that she was on the right path. If the customers could feel the difference, then things were changing for the better. Not everyone resisted the change. Noah, the young busboy, had been one of the first to openly support Megan. He watched how she handled things, and little by little, he started encouraging others to follow suit. "She's actually trying to make this place better," he told one of the waitresses one night. "Maybe we should give her a chance." Over time, the mood in the restaurant began to shift. The staff who had been skeptical at first started to notice the improvements. The schedule was fairer, the work environment was less tense, and customers were happier. Those who truly cared about the job adapted, while those who thrived in the old toxic culture found themselves increasingly out of place. Richard Lawson, the owner, had been keeping a close eye on the restaurant's progress. He made occasional visits, never announcing himself, but Megan always knew when he was there. She saw him watching, listening, quietly taking note of how things were running. When sales began to increase, he was particularly pleased. The combination of better service and a growing base of loyal customers was making a real difference. But Megan's biggest challenge was yet to come. One particularly busy evening, Beth decided she had had enough. Megan was at the hostess stand, helping direct the dinner rush, when she heard Beth's voice ring out over the chatter. "This is ridiculous," Beth shouted, slamming a tray onto the counter. "I am sick of this favoritism. Megan's got her little pets, and the rest of us get treated like garbage." The restaurant fell silent. Customers and employees alike turned to watch the unfolding confrontation. Jason, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. Megan took a deep breath, keeping her voice calm. "Beth, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we are all here to serve our customers with dignity and respect. If you can't be part of that vision, then maybe this isn't the right place for you." Beth let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, please. You think you're better than us just because Richard handed you this job? You're a joke." Megan didn't flinch. "I was given this job because I treat people the way they deserve to be treated. That includes you, Beth. I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to make this restaurant better." Beth looked around, waiting for support, but found none. The other employees remained silent, their eyes downcast or fixed on their work. Even Jason, who had been her closest ally, looked away. Realizing she had lost, Beth let out a sharp breath and grabbed her purse. "You know what? I don't need this. I quit." She stormed out without another word. A moment later, Jason, who had been watching the entire scene unfold, exhaled and muttered, "Guess I'm out too." He tossed his apron onto the counter and followed Beth out the door. For a few moments, the restaurant was completely still. Then, slowly, the conversation resumed. A few employees exchanged looks, but quickly went back to work. Noah, standing near the drink station, met Megan's eyes and gave her a small nod of approval. The toxic presence that had loomed over the restaurant for so long was finally gone. Megan took a steadying breath and looked around at the staff that remained. "All right," she said, her voice even. "Let's get back to work." That night, the restaurant felt lighter. The energy was different. The weight of Beth and Jason's negativity had lifted, and in its place was something else, something better. A fresh start. The departure of Beth and Jason marked the beginning of a new chapter for Lancaster Grill. Without their negativity, the restaurant felt different, lighter, more welcoming. Employees who had once been hesitant now found themselves working together, discovering the satisfaction of an environment built on mutual respect. The tension that had once poisoned the air was gone, replaced by a renewed sense of camaraderie and purpose. Megan wasted no time in ensuring the momentum continued. She gathered the staff for a meeting, outlining her vision for the restaurant. "This is our chance to build something better," she told them. "I want this to be a place where people enjoy coming to work, where customers feel valued, and where we take pride in what we do. But I can't do this alone. It's up to all of us." To reinforce this, she implemented a series of changes. Staff training sessions were held regularly, focusing on customer service, teamwork, and communication. She introduced a suggestion box, encouraging employees to share their thoughts and ideas on improving operations. Some were skeptical at first, but when Megan began acting on their feedback, adjusting shifts, streamlining processes, and even adding a few requested items to the menu, people realized she was serious. One of Megan's biggest initiatives was improving the menu. Instead of arbitrary changes, she went straight to the customers, asking for their opinions. "What's your favorite dish? What would you like to see added?" She engaged with them personally, taking their feedback seriously. After weeks of careful consideration, new items were introduced: fresh salads, heartier entrees, and a few classic comfort foods that had been frequently requested. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Regular patrons who had once been skeptical about the changes now embraced the restaurant's new direction. Richard Lawson watched these developments closely. He still visited unannounced, as he always had, but now, instead of catching people neglecting their duties, he saw a team that was engaged and thriving. On one particular afternoon, he called Megan into his office. "You've done more than just fix the problems here, Megan," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You've built something better." Megan, who had never been one for taking compliments easily, smiled but said nothing. Richard continued, "I've been thinking. Lancaster Grill isn't the only location I own. And if we're being honest, this wasn't the only one with issues. I need someone who can take what they've done here and apply it elsewhere. I want you to consider overseeing more locations." Megan blinked, stunned. "You want me to run more restaurants?" Richard nodded. "Not just run them, transform them. Do what you did here." She thought about it for a moment. Just a few weeks ago, she had been fired without warning. She had felt like her entire world had collapsed. Now, she was being offered an even bigger opportunity than she could have ever imagined. It was overwhelming, but it was also proof that everything she had endured had led her to something greater. A slow smile spread across her face. "I'd love to." Richard grinned. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." With that, Megan stepped into a new role once again, not just as the manager of Lancaster Grill, but as a leader with the ability to create lasting change across multiple locations. The transformation of Lancaster Grill was more than just a business success. It was a testament to the power of integrity, perseverance, and kindness. Word spread about what had happened, and Megan's story became an inspiration. Employees from other restaurants reached out to her, eager to work under a leader who valued fairness and respect. Customers who had once felt invisible now felt heard. The ripple effect of her actions was undeniable. In the end, Megan's journey proved that standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, can lead to unexpected and extraordinary rewards. And as she looked ahead, she knew this was only the beginning. Megan's journey from being unfairly fired to becoming a leader who transformed an entire workplace is a testament to the power of standing by one's principles. In a world where it's often easier to turn a blind eye, she chose to stand up for what was right, even when it cost her everything. And in the end, that choice led her to something greater than she could have ever imagined. Her story is one that resonates with so many. Those who have faced injustice, who have been overlooked, who have struggled in toxic work environments. It proves that kindness and integrity are not weaknesses. They are strengths that have the power to create real, lasting change. Megan didn't just fix a broken restaurant. She built something better, something that set an example for others to follow. Lancaster Grill's transformation was not just about policies and procedures. It was about people. Employees who once dreaded coming to work now took pride in their jobs. Customers who had once been ignored now felt valued. The shift wasn't just in the numbers or the bottom line. It was in the atmosphere, in the way people treated each other. And that change all started with one person who refused to accept the status quo. For business owners and managers, Megan's story is a lesson in leadership. A respectful and inclusive workplace is not just good for employees. It's good for business. When people feel valued, they perform better. When customers are treated well, they return. And when a company is built on a foundation of fairness and respect, it thrives. Megan's journey is proof that doing the right thing always pays off in the end. It may not happen immediately, and there may be obstacles along the way, but standing by your values will always lead to something greater. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Have you ever faced a challenge at work for doing the right thing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's spread the message that integrity matters and that good people do win in the end.